This is the world's shiniest 3x3. It's made by Cyclone Boys, and it's basically just a normal plastic Rubik's Cube on the inside, but with this really nice metallic coating on the outside. Now Cyclone Boys makes some pretty good speed cubes, and this thing is no exception. You might think that a fancy looking cube like this would turn terrible, but no, this thing has magnets and it turns great. But even though I could average 15 seconds on this thing, that's not going to be the purpose of this video. Instead, when I first saw one of these at a cubing competition, my first and only thought was, I gotta buy 6 of those and make force cubes. And so, I bought 6 of them, and I'm gonna make force cubes. If you don't already know, making force cubes just involves taking a bunch of stickerless cubes and rearranging all the pieces so that you end up with one color per cube, so one totally red cube, one totally green cube, etc. You'll see what I mean. But quick side note, these are some of the most fun boxes I've ever seen. They have little holes and studs, so they basically stick together like Legos. And so you can make some really cool looking towers, like this. I just thought that was cool. Anyway, if you've seen my channel before, then you'll know that I love making useless force cubes, and I think that the world's shiniest force cubes are a great way to add to that collection. So, let's get started. Alright, here they are. The shiny force cubes are complete. And don't they just look incredible? I mean, the original metallic 3x3 looked pretty cool, but there's something that just looks so much more complete and cohesive about these individual ones. Sure, I pretty much defeated their entire purpose as Rubik's Cubes, but something about the solid color property of a force cube combined with this metallic finish just makes them into such cool looking objects. Like, take a look at this yellow one. It almost looks like a golden Rubik's Cube. You could give this as, say, an award for a cubing competition, and you literally never have to turn it. It just looks so cool on its own. This could be the second place medal, and this could be the bronze third place. But then the RGB ones over here with their bright colors look equally cool. And you know what? Now that I'm looking at these, I think I just realized what they remind me of. They're kind of like 3x3 versions of those old metallic Meffert's Ghost Cubes that used to be super rare. They must not have made a lot of them because they would sell for like hundreds of dollars on eBay. If anyone remembers those, these have a super similar finish. They're probably made in the same way, except for obviously they're 3x3s instead of Ghost Cubes, which means that you can't really solve them. The Ghost Cube is a much better puzzle for a finish like this because all the sides have to be the same color for the puzzle to be difficult, but oh well. As for actually making the force cubes themselves, it was a little bit harder than a normal 3x3. The cubes come apart pretty easily, just like this, and you can see that it's all white plastic on the inside, which makes our lives a little bit easier. The center caps pop off super easily just like that. Same thing with the edge caps, you can sort of pop them off like this. And so that makes it pretty easy to mix and match the colors and make your force cubes. The one part that is a little bit tricky is the corners, not because they don't come apart, but just because they don't come apart very easily. I can kind of maybe get one off here. Yeah, there we go. That one actually came off pretty easily. I had to use a knife to get most of them off, but once you do that with all the pieces, you're pretty much home free. You can reassemble them however you want, and there you go. So yeah, it was a little bit more time consuming than a standard 3x3 with 2-part edges and 3-part corners, but not all that much more difficult. The two things you really want to avoid when you're making force cubes are glued together pieces, which can be a huge pain to try and separate, or asymmetrical pieces where you may not have the exact right amount of each type. But these cubes had neither of those, so I'm going to call it a win. The one thing that does make them not quite as great for making force cubes is the price. I think there's something like $15 each, which kind of adds up quite a bit once you're buying 6 of them, or 7. And even if you do just want to buy one of them, which I would totally recommend because they look super cool and they turn great, then I'll leave a link down in the description to where you can buy them at thecubicle.com, and you can use discount code C3Cubing for 5% off. Oh yeah, and despite these being cubes that I literally made just to look at, that I'm probably never going to actually turn, of course I splurged the few extra dollars on each cube to buy the magnetic versions. So I believe these are my first ever magnetic force cubes. But I mean, we're making the world's shiniest force cubes here, not the world's greatest value force cubes, so whatever. Anyway, speaking of the turning, they turn pretty well. Since these cubes are brand new, they kind of feel like they need to be broken in a little bit. They have a little bit of that nice sandy feeling to them, but the bigger thing I've noticed is that these cubes kind of have a satisfying clunkiness to them. You can probably hear it in the turning. It just feels like the pieces have a lot of momentum to them. The cubes aren't particularly heavy, but it's almost like the weight distribution is just a little bit strange. You might not want that feeling in a speed cube, but for a fun novelty cube like this, I would say that it adds to the experience. It kind of makes it feel a little bit more premium, almost as if you're turning a real metal cube. Oh, and one more thing, these cubes had a lot of lube in them from the factory, which of course got all over my hands as I was taking them apart, and then all over the pieces, and so now they're all just a little bit slippery on the outside, so I'm gonna have to wipe them down. Oh yeah, and speaking of wiping them down, these cubes are fingerprint magnets. Even on the normal cube, if you just touch this cube for 5 seconds, you will be able to tell because of the fingerprints. I'm not sure if that could damage the finish if you left a bunch of fingerprints on there for a long time, but let's just say that I'm not gonna take any chances, and I'm gonna wipe all of these down very well before I leave them on my shelf. Anyway, yeah, these are probably one of, if not my favorite set of Force cubes that I have ever made. Just the uniform metallic finish looks so incredibly cool. Of course, like all of my Force cubes, they don't really have a practical purpose, but I think of all of my Force cubes, these ones definitely look the best. But I hope you all enjoyed this video and these Force cubes as much as I have. If you haven't already, go check out the time that I made Megaming's Force cubes. That's definitely another favorite. I'll see you guys next time.